In the days long before the great flood, the world was growing dark with sin. Giants, born of the fallen watchers, roamed the land. Violence and corruption spread among humankind, and the pure knowledge that Enoch had once shared was fading. Some families, however, still clung to righteousness and remembered Enoch's words. Enoch himself had been taken up into the heavens. Stories of his journeys told how he walked with angels, mapped the cosmic gates of the sun and moon, and beheld the very throne of the Most High. Yet he left behind sons and grandsons, among them Methuselah and Noah, entrusted to preserve truth in a world careening toward destruction. As the generations passed, the line of Seth endured, but only a handful of the faithful remained to keep Enoch's teachings alive. Noah was a righteous man whom God would soon call upon to build an ark. He had brothers, though the texts of Genesis do not mention them. One brother, however, appears in the hidden records. Nir, Noah's younger sibling, a quiet man who feared God. Nir served as a priest in the tradition handed down since Adam, an ancient priesthood overshadowed by the world's growing wickedness. Nir lived with his wife Sothonim in a modest homestead near the place where Noah was building his ark. They tended fields, kept a small flock of sheep, and quietly observed the sacred calendar that Enoch had taught. Their days were filled with labor and prayer, always mindful that the times were evil and that God's judgment was imminent. Nir and Sothonim had grown old without children. This reality weighed on Nir's heart, for he had no heir to carry on his priestly duties once he passed. Sothonim too felt the burden of childlessness in a culture where descendants were considered a special blessing from God. One twilight evening, Nir sat at the threshold of his tent, watching the silhouettes of Noah's construction in the distance. Hammer blows echoed across the valley. Sothonim knelt beside him, a thoughtful expression on her face. She had felt changes in her body, but dared not speak of them, not even to her husband. The intuition haunted her that something extraordinary was unfolding within her, something too miraculous to voice. As days turned into weeks, Sothonim could no longer hide the signs. Her belly began to swell, a wonder that should have been impossible at her advanced age. Fear seized her heart. Would Nir suspect her of wrongdoing? Had some fallen spirit overshadowed her? The dread of suspicion grew stronger each day, for the era was rife with tales of angelic transgression and monstrous births. Finally, in tearful desperation, Sothonim approached Nir in their tent. She fell at his feet, sobbing uncontrollably. Concerned, Nir lifted her head and asked what trouble burdened her soul. With trembling lips, Sothonim confessed her inexplicable pregnancy. Nir's reaction was a complex wave of emotions: astonishment, confusion, and a flicker of hope. Filled with both reverence and apprehension, Nir prayed deeply that night, praying for understanding. In a dream, an angel of the Lord appeared, shining like polished bronze. The angel comforted Nir, telling him not to fear and that the child to be born was part of God's plan, ordained for a priestly purpose greater than any Nir could imagine. As time progressed, Sothonim's belly grew heavy with child. She felt no pain or sickness. Instead, a curious peace surrounded her, as though she were enveloped by an unseen protection. At last, in the fullness of days, she went into labor. Neighbors were scarce, for most families had fled or fallen into wickedness, but those who did remain came to her tent to help. A radiant light filled the small space as the child was delivered. Cries of awe went up, for the newborn appeared unlike any child they had seen. He was as white as snow, ruddy in parts, and seemed to glow with an inner brightness. Most astonishing of all, he opened his mouth and uttered praises to the Most High. Whispers spread among the attendants. Could he be from the angels? Or is this truly God's miracle? Nir, fearful yet awestruck, cradled the child. The baby's eyes were calm, almost wise, as though he were taking in more than ordinary mortals could see. The watchers who stood by the tent door swore that an invisible wind stirred, and they felt the brush of heavenly wings. It was then that Nir recalled the angelic dream. "This child," he murmured, "is born for a holy purpose." When they examined the baby closer, they discovered a curious insignia on his chest, a vivid symbol that seemed etched into his very flesh. To Nir, it resembled the sacred markings that signified the high priesthood, though no mortal hand had performed any ceremony. The onlookers gasped, and rumors swirled that the baby was touched by God himself. Sothonim, exhausted, beamed with relief and adoration. Yet as she gazed upon her miraculous son, she felt her life slipping away. In some versions of the story, she dies immediately, her life force spent. In others, she lingers a short while, blessing her child and speaking final words of gratitude to Nir. Regardless, in the tapestry of Second Enoch's narrative, Sothonim does not survive long after the child's birth. Her death, bittersweet in its timing, seems to seal the gravity of this event, a miracle exchanged for a life, a sign that God's plan often carries both wonder and sorrow. That very night after the child's birth, Nir retired to a corner of his tent to pray. He needed guidance. How would he raise this holy infant alone in a wicked generation? As darkness fell, a brilliant light penetrated the tent. The archangel Michael stood before him. Even with his devout faith, Nir quaked at the angel's radiant presence. "Fear not," Michael said, his voice echoing like distant thunder. "This child shall be called Melchizedek. He is set apart from the children of men, that the holy seed of priesthood should not perish before the flood. The Most High has seen your righteousness, and he grants you this comfort." Nir, trembling, bowed low, listening to every word. Michael revealed that the deluge, the great flood, was imminent. Soon the iniquity of the world would be washed away, sparing only Noah's family. Yet there was another design at work. A priestly line needed to endure beyond the flood. Thus, God had orchestrated the birth of Melchizedek, destined to serve as a high priest in the age to come. Over the next days and weeks, Nir cared for the infant Melchizedek, who grew miraculously fast. Though still tender, the child displayed unusual wisdom. He gazed at the skies as if he already recognized the constellations and the rhythms of the heavenly luminaries Enoch had once described. When Nir whispered blessings over him, Melchizedek responded as though he comprehended the sacred words. But the world outside Nir's tent was collapsing further into violence. The giants, offspring of fallen angels, wrought havoc and bloodshed. Men turned to idols, bowing before carved images. Nir sensed that time was running short. One evening, Nir took Melchizedek outside to behold the rising moon. The child, now able to speak small phrases, pointed upward and spoke of God's majesty. Nir remembered Enoch's teachings about the appointed times and realized Melchizedek was no ordinary child. He was a bridge between the ancient righteousness and whatever world would emerge after the floodwaters receded. Noah, meanwhile, continued building the ark. Word had spread that a catastrophic flood would cleanse the earth. Despite mockery from corrupt men, Noah hammered on. Materials were brought in from distant lands. Every plank that formed the ark's frame resonated with the prophecy of impending doom. Some evenings, Nir would bring Melchizedek to the ark's construction site. They watched as Noah diligently measured the planks according to divine instructions. Nir's heart was torn. Should Melchizedek be on the ark? Or was there another path? The memory of Michael's words returned to him. He shall be taken away so that his line remains pure. With each passing day, the once flourishing fields near them began to wither under the moral corruption saturating the land. Ominous clouds loomed over the horizon. Thunder rumbled in the distance, foretelling that the hour of judgment was nearing. Animals began arriving in pairs, guided by an unseen hand. At last, in the hush of pre-dawn, Nir woke to an unearthly luminescence flooding his dwelling. The archangel Michael appeared again, now accompanied by another angel whose presence was equally overwhelming. They had come to fulfill the promise spoken at Melchizedek's birth. Michael spoke gently to Nir. "The time has come. The earth shall soon be covered with mighty waters. We must take the child, for he carries the sign of the high priest, a covenant that must endure. Have no fear, Nir, for the child shall be safe." Tears welled in Nir's eyes. Though he knew this day would come, it wrenched his heart to let go of his beloved son. Yet Nir bowed in submission to the divine will, trusting that God's purpose was higher than his own understanding. Michael lifted Melchizedek, who looked up at Nir with an expression of serene understanding. Then, with a flash of brilliant light, the angels ascended, carrying the child away. Soon after Melchizedek's departure, the rains began. Thunder shook the earth, and water poured from the heavens as well as burst from subterranean fountains. The ark stood firm, guided by divine providence, with Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives safely aboard. The entire world was submerged beneath the swirling waters, washing away the monstrous Nephilim and purging the rampant evil among men. When the deluge finally ended, Noah's ark came to rest upon the mountains. A new beginning awaited humanity, but unknown to most, a hidden priest also awaited beyond the mortal plane, Melchizedek, preserved in paradise for a purpose only God fully understood. In the generations after the flood, stories arose of a mysterious high priest who served the Most High God without genealogical ties that anyone could trace. This figure would later appear in the days of Abraham, greeting the patriarch with bread and wine, blessing him in the name of God Most High, and being honored by Abraham in return. It was said that this priest-king's name was Melchizedek, meaning King of Righteousness. The line from Enoch through Methuselah, Nir, and Noah continued to flow, ultimately converging in God's unfolding plan for humanity.